Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Nick DiMartino. That's Zain Bando. That's Anthony Balester. This is a new episode of Forever Power 5 on the Empty the Bench Network. You can find us on youtube.com/ETB Network, where you can watch all Empty the Bench Network shows. You can find all of our podcasts at etbpodcast.com, where you listen to this podcast and every other Empty the Bench podcast. You can listen to Forever Power 5 wherever you get your podcasts. And, of course, this show, Forever Power 5, is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, upping your favorite players and teams, and watching the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB Network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. All right. So it was a pretty big week of college football. We have a lot to get to, but first and foremost, we have to talk about Oregon, Ohio State, and the slide from hell from Will Howard, the worst slide ever. I just want to, I don't want to focus too much on that one particular play because it was it wasn't good situational awareness. I just do want to point out that 2 weeks in a row, there has been quarterbacks just running out of time that just didn't keep. It is like the most college quarterback thing to just run out of time in a potentially game-winning drive. There's a lot of things with this game. First of all, let me just say, this is as good of a loss. Look, there's no such thing as a good loss, but if there is such thing as a good loss, this definitely fits that description. This definitely fits that description for Ohio State. They lost on the road to a top 10 team by 1 point in a game that could have gone either way. It was very, very, it was certainly 50-50. Obviously, I think there were some concerns for Ohio State going forward after this performance, for sure, in certain areas. But they lost by 1 point to Oregon. Who is on the road, and Oregon is a tough place to play. And also, I still think Ohio State probably makes the playoffs, but they do have a lot less margin for error, Ohio State. If they lose to Penn State, they're in a lot of trouble. And Penn State is very good this year, and they're playing at Happy Valley. And Happy Valley is a tough place to play. And we've seen Penn State beat Ohio State at home before, even when Ohio State were heavy favorites. Overall, though, we also have to give a lot of credit to Oregon. Dylan Gabriel played a great game. Will Howard played a great game too. He was just not good situationally. He was not good situationally was not good. But overall, Will Howard played a very good game too. I don't know. What were your guys' thoughts on this?
I guess I'll start. So this game lived up to the hype and then some. For those of you who watched my recent episode of Bando's Blitz, we got this one wrong. I thought the Buckeyes would cover the spread. They nearly did, and they broke my heart at the very end of the game. So just goes to show thankfully I didn't have a legitimate each run, so thankfully didn't break the wallet. But in any respect, though, it was a tough game on both sides. Both offenses played well. One thing I did want to note: 667 combined passing yards between these two quarterbacks. That just goes to show you how wild this game was. We had 7 different lead changes at one point. This felt like a de facto Big Ten championship game a couple of months early. And as you just alluded to, Nick, Ohio State's got a big game coming up against Penn State in a couple of weeks. It's a game that Penn State has circled on the calendar for probably the last 364 days or so, knowing that they want to get this one back and knowing that this might be James Franklin's last legitimate chance to beat Ohio State once more, as he has yet to do so in quite some time, as you just alluded to. But I think something to also factor into, it just goes to show you, just how dominant both of these programs are. Everybody knew this game would live up to the hype, but I don't think anybody would. I don't think anybody expected the sheer madness that took place in the fourth quarter, and just with the way the game ended, and just with Ohio State's poor clock management at the end to even remotely get into field goal range was a little bit disappointing. And something else I wanted to add too. I mean, when's the last time you saw Eugene, Oregon, Oxton Stadium be that hyped for a game? Probably since the days of Marcus Mariota. So it just goes to show you that both of those teams were legit. Both of those teams will more than likely rematch if things go according to plan the next couple of months. And that was just an appetizer for the craziness that's going to occur in college football over the next few weeks as we kind of wind down the weeks until the first college football playoff rankings are revealed, which I think will be very exciting as well. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, I do want to point out, like, the thing that cost them the game was not so much the slide as much as it was the pass interference call
right,
on Jeremiah Smith at the end of the game.
right.
That pass interference call, which was very ticky-tacky, I didn't think it was the right call. I didn't think that was a pass interference.
I didn't think so either.
I didn't see it. And they were never calling that. Like, the whole game, the game was physical. I thought it was weird to me that they called that pass interference call at the very end like that. So if not for that pass interference call, we're having a completely different conversation about how Ohio State is the number one team in the country. And I still think Ohio State is a very good team. I mean, Anthony, I didn't get to you yet, so I just want to get your reaction to the game.
Yeah, I got a few thoughts on this. Before I do get to the game, though, I do have to say this. I do want to give a tribute to Tylee Kraft. He's the wide receiver for North Carolina, number 13. Tragically, he did pass away. He's the wide receiver for North Carolina, 23 years old. Was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer at the tender age of like 20, 21 years old. So he has been battling. He was able to make it through the game, but unfortunately he did pass away not too long after the game. So I do want to, give a shout out and, say my prayers and my thoughts are with him and his family. Obviously that's more important than football. But when it comes to this game, you guys were mentioning the Will Howard slide. I want to talk about, what Dan Lanning did. He was playing chess, not checkers out there. And,
I forgot to bring this up.
They were talking about how they had a penalty for too many men on the field. Now, obviously, when you see that, you think, okay, well, maybe the coach just miscounted, maybe miscalculation. But he purposely did the 12 men on the field, knowing that it would kill clock. They would get the penalty, but they're not going to get the time back. This is why the NFL, when these plays happen, they give you the time back. Now, college football now has come out and stated that now if this happens going forward, the team will get the time back on the clock. But Dan Lanning outsmarted them, did the 12 men on purpose, killed more clock, which helped force Ohio State into those mistakes. So obviously that played a huge role in this as well. Dillon Gabriel was on fire. This is going to skyrocket him up the Heisman rankings. He was phenomenal running the ball. He was dead accurate. Evan Stewart had a great game. He was burning Denzel Burke, Ohio State's corner, all game. That was a tough matchup for him. And what about Ohio State's running game? They have two great running backs, and it didn't really show out much. Oregon's defensive line, led by Derek Harmon, really kept them in check. And that was a huge, point in the game. Obviously, the passing game with Will Howard, Emeka Mbuka, Jeremiah Smith, they were pretty solid. But they kind of, eliminated Ohio State's running game. And I think this was a great game by Dillon Gabriel and Dan Lanning in Oregon.
Yeah,
yeah, and you just and I don't mean interrupting.
No,
Anthony, you just brought up a great point. If the Ohio State secondary doesn't get some things cleaned up, they might be in a little bit of a disaster on the next couple of weeks, hanging with some of these offenses that have proven that in some of these lesser known pass defenses they can play well, and that's something that Ohio State is more than likely going to have to look out for in the weeks moving forward. So,
yeah, well, I mean, Quinshon Judkins had 2 yards per carry. He did not have a very good game at all. Travion Henderson was a lot better, but I mean, you're talking about the secondary for Ohio State. I mean, that is true. It is true. Evan Stewart burned Denzel Burke in that game, but it's also because. But you have to remember, the defense works as a unit, and that's because Ohio State's pass rush wasn't good. Oregon's offensive line, which I mean, it's crazy that they got off to such a slow start because their offensive line was so bad. We talked ad nauseum about it in their non-conference games, but their offensive line totally owned Ohio State's pass rush. And the thing is that like you can't like when a secondary gets burned, a lot of times that is a product of the pass rush, not or of the front seven, not actually getting to the quarterback, because Dillon Gabriel had all the time in the world to throw. He had all the time in the world. He was extending plays. And the thing is that when quarterbacks have all the time in the world, there's only so much the secondary can do. The secondary can't, like, corners can't defend wide receivers. Defensive backs can't defend wide receivers for that long. So if quarterbacks have all the time in the world, they're going to get open. So it's not just about the secondary. I think it's about I think a lot of it is probably more about the pass rush, if anything, because they weren't getting to Dillon Gabriel.
And that's surprising because Ohio State is supposed to have two great bookends. You got JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer. These are two guys that NFL draft experts expect to go in the first and second round, and they were no-shows. I did say when we were talking about Oregon's bad offensive line, I did say they had the talent. They just had to put it together, and it looks like they have put it together.
Yeah, well, the thing is, offensive lines, I mean, we see this in the NFL all the time. It's a lot more about, like, than it is about, like, them. It's not so much about linemen as individuals, although it's about that a little bit too, but it's really more about how that line functions as a group, usually how it works in football. You can have a great left tackle, but if the offensive line is just if they don't gel together, it's not going to be a good offensive line. That seems to be what it looked like at Oregon. Now, this has pretty big implications on the Big Ten. I think, first of all, there's a good chance they end up playing each other in the Big Ten championship game anyway. There's a good chance that Oregon goes undefeated, Ohio State goes 11-1, Penn State goes 11-1. Assuming if Ohio State beats Penn State, which more likely than not they will. And I'm not saying Penn State can't beat them, just more likely than not. In that case, Oregon plays Ohio State. Oregon and Ohio State play again in the Big Ten championship game. And yeah, Ohio State could end up winning that game for sure. I mean, this was at Oregon. They lost by a point on a pass interference call. Maybe if Will Howard has slightly better situational awareness, maybe if Dan Lanning doesn't purposely get a penalty, putting 12 men on the field, Ohio State could win that game. So I don't think it changes Ohio State that much. And at least then Ohio State in that case would get a first round bye. By the way, who knows? There's a good chance that Ohio State could be the number one ranked team at the end of the season. I mean, Texas still has to play Georgia, and they have to win, and they have to play the national championship game. Who knows what's going to happen there? So, but another thing that I think that this could do is, and it's not necessarily about this one game in particular, because if it was reversed, I think that if the outcome was reversed and Ohio State had won, I think you could probably say the same thing. But this could end up leading with 3 Big Ten teams making the playoff. You could end up with Ohio State, Oregon, and Penn State all making it, since Penn State beat USC, and we'll get to that in a minute. But if Penn State is 11-1 and they lose to Ohio State, it's going to be hard to justify leaving them out. So we could end up in a playoff situation with, say, 3 SEC teams, 3 Big Ten teams, 2 ACC teams, that's 8, 1 Big 12 team, one at-large bid, and then 2 others, really. 2 others from one of the conferences, including and Notre Dame probably. So really 1 other from one of the conferences. I think it sets up for a very sort of interesting conversation, because I think there's going to be a lot of 10-2 teams that are going to be on the cusp. But if Penn State, I think right now it looks like there's going to be 3 Big Ten teams in the playoff.
So wait a minute, are you ruling out Indiana potentially going 11-1 with their only loss being to Ohio State?
No. I think they could make it too.
So but do you think it could be one of those scenarios where if Indiana doesn't beat Ohio State, that more than likely means they don't make the Big Ten championship. So they would have to hope that other teams lose, right?
Let's just put it this way. I'm not ruling anything out. I'm just saying the likelihood of Indiana going 11-1 is probably lower than the likelihood of Penn State going 11-1.
Right.
Not saying Indiana. No. Indiana's been sneaky good. They actually statistically have like one of the top offenses in the country, actually.
Yep, they do.
But just looking at it, I mean, so I'm not writing them off or anything like that, but I'm just looking at like the likelihood of everything happening. But yeah, that could happen. That could happen too. And that would be interesting because if their only loss is to all, okay, so let's say in that scenario, you have an 11-1 Oregon, an 11-1 Ohio State, an 11-1 Penn State, and an 11-1 Alabama.
That's right. Like actually, Nick D, now that I think of it, Indiana will probably go 10-2 because even though they're playing a Michigan team that struggled a little bit, that's a game they could easily lose. So outside of go ahead, sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I think first of all, they're playing Nebraska at noon on Saturday. They could easily lose that game too. I mean, I know that they're 6.5-point favorites, but they could easily lose that game. Nebraska is no slouch.
Right.
Yeah, in regards to Ohio State, I said it preseason, I said it last week. I've been saying all along, I think Ohio State was going to lose to Oregon, and I don't think they're going to lose the rest of the year. They're my preseason pick to win the championship. I still think that's a possibility now. The injury to Josh Simmons, the left tackle, that does scare me a little bit, particularly since Ohio State's offensive line's been a little shaky. I think that can be a huge loss, but I still am confident in Ohio State, and I still think they're going to run the table the rest of the year and win the championship.
Yeah, that sounds perfectly plausible. I think they can compete with all the SEC teams all the time. In fact, I think they're better than some of the SEC teams. Ohio State looks really, really good this year, I think. And Penn State looks really good too. And I mean, first of all, Ohio State's receiving core is like they have the most stacked receiving core in the country. And I don't really hold losses like this against teams like Ohio State, especially.
No, you can't. It's very similar to when Alabama played Georgia.
Yeah, except I think this one is even better because Alabama, I think, is a weaker team than Oregon right now, from what we've seen.
I agree.
But yes, very similar in a sense.
Right. I mean, now Alabama's barely winning games. So
right. And Oregon is just on the rise right now. And like Texas is the number one team in the country. It's also true that Texas was never tested like this. Not for nothing. Like they never had to go on the road and play like a really difficult SEC game. I
think Oregon should have been ranked first.
Yeah. They probably which is the problem with rankings in mid-October is that like there's a reason the college football playoff rankings haven't come out yet. And it's just the AP because you can't fairly evaluate the teams yet. Right. Like Texas never had to play a game like this. Right. Even though I think they're probably the best team in the country, like it's not really a fair comparison just because Ohio State lost to Oregon. Another Big Ten game, Penn State beat USC in overtime. This is a great win for Penn State. I mean, USC is a good team. I remember I was talking last week about USC's weaknesses and that is 100% true. I don't take any of that back, but USC is still a tough place to go. They still went on the road to the West Coast and beat USC in their stadium. I mean,
and had to rally and win.
Yeah, and not to mention, I mean, the problem with USC, I think, is that they're always like a one-half team.
Right.
Like they play really well in one half and don't play well in the other. And it's not always the same way. Sometimes they're good in the first half and then they're terrible in the second half, or it's the other way around. That's the problem with USC. Although overall, I think USC is a good team. They're 3-3, but they're the best 3-3 team I've ever seen. They're the best 3-3 team in the country. I think that they're better than that, than their record would suggest. And that's a very good win for Penn State. A very good win. I will say in OT, Penn State did get away with 2 pass interferences in overtime. I think they probably would have won anyway, to be honest, because the momentum was totally in Penn State's direction. Their tight end was incredible. I don't know if you guys, I don't know how much of this game you guys saw, but like, did you see the play?
I saw the fourth quarter, the back half of the fourth quarter.
Yeah, Tyler Warren was unbelievable. I mean, that was one of the best tight end performances I may have ever seen him. He took over that game.
Yeah. Did you see the play? I'm sure you guys at least saw it I'm sure both of you probably saw it on social media when Tyler Warren snapped the ball and scored a touchdown on the same play.
It was unbelievable.
That was crazy. That was an amazing. That was just that was just an amazing play. And I mean, they were still able to win the game. And Drew Aller, he threw like 3 interceptions. Like he didn't really play that great of a game. Drew Aller.
No, it was arguably his worst game of the season, more than likely.
Yeah, probably. It probably was. It actually went exactly as I predicted. It actually went exactly as I predicted. Penn State won, but didn't cover the 3.5. But overall, this I would say this probably, even if Penn State loses to Ohio State, I mean, this probably punched Penn State's ticket to the playoff, I think.
Yeah, definitely a huge win for James Franklin and Penn State, but what a heartbreaking loss for USC. I mean, they did everything right to win this game. I mean, we've been speaking ad nauseum about USC's run defense, and the run defense really wasn't all that bad. I feel like, Katron Allen and Nick Singleton didn't go off like a lot of people expected them to. And then, they were forcing Drew Aller into multiple interceptions, but it was just a fourth quarter collapse. Obviously, Tyler Warren, the tight end, they didn't have an answer for him. But Kamari Ramsey, the safety for USC, the secondary as a whole for USC played great. So I thought the defense played great for USC, but this was another fourth quarter collapse. We saw them have a fourth quarter collapse against Minnesota, and it's just going to be tough for Lincoln Riley because he knows his team's good. He knows this is probably a much better team than what he had last year. It's just they're losing these really close games, and they're a few plays away from having a really good record. But unfortunately, this is just going to be one of those teams that, just lose a lot of close games. Luck's just not on their side, and unfortunately, it's going to cost them a playoff spot.
Yeah, they remind me a lot of the Jets. Yeah, no, that's 100% true. I mean, they're only a couple of snaps away from being 6-0.
They really are.
Like they're not really that bad of it. Like they're not that bad of a team. Like most 3-3 teams really kind of stink, but this 3-3 team is actually very good. And 2 of them were road games. 2 of them were road games. One of them was against the top 10 team. So their schedule hasn't really been particularly easy. I mean, look, I think that winning close games is a skill in and of itself, but at the same time, USC is like right there. They're like right there.
Well, and Nick D, I mean, you just mentioned it. Like looking at their upcoming schedule, they have a chance to win 5 out of their next 6 games. So, yeah. I mean, you've got a Maryland team that hasn't really been tested. To be fair, you got a Rutgers team where the jury's still out. You got a Washington team that's still riding high off of an upset win against Michigan. You have a Nebraska team that kind of lost its identity after losing to Illinois and Lincoln last month. Then you got a UCLA team where nobody really knows what their identity is either. And you got a Notre Dame team that will more than likely finish with only 1 loss. So
yeah. I mean, by the way, I think they're going to go on a huge winning streak right here. I mean, and they're, even if they somehow beat Notre Dame, I still don't think they make the playoffs. I don't think any 9-3 teams are making the playoffs.
I don't think so either.
I don't know. Like USC, like I said, like they do have a lot of weaknesses. I don't think they're even good enough for a 12-team playoff to compete with. Maybe the bottom of the 12-team.
The bottom, yeah.
Like a team like Boise
I could see them
State
beating. Yeah. You just alluded to it. Like I could see them beating Boise State, for example,
or whoever wins the Big 12.
Right.
Or maybe, which the Big 12, by the way, the hottest team in the Big 12 right now looks like Iowa State. They look like the hottest team in the Big 12 right now. But potentially maybe better than the best Big 12 team. But their playoff chances now are just not good. But not only they're not good, they're basically done. Like if you were, I would bet that you can't even bet on whether or not they're going to make the playoffs on DraftKings. But I also think that like just because it's over for when it comes to the playoffs for this year, that doesn't mean that they don't have a bright future.
Oh,
I
they
think
do.
US
They
I
do.
think USC has a bright, like the program has a bright future. It's just one of it just is a bit of a growing pain season, I guess, is how I would put it. It reminds me a little bit of, I mean, it's Lincoln Riley's third season with USC. It reminds me a lot of Jim Harbaugh's third season at Michigan in 2017. It's very similar. Like it produced a lot of. I think that team went 8-4, if I'm not mistaken. They weren't a bad team, but they lost all the big games. They lost to Ohio State, Penn State, Wisconsin that year. Michigan State they lost to. So Michigan was good that year, but they just lost all the big games. And everybody was just calling for Harbaugh's head. Harbaugh's overrated. Harbaugh can't win the
Yeah,
big
you're
game.
thinking, Nick D, you're thinking of Michigan's 2017 season.
That's what I said. Yeah.
Yep.
And so yeah, they lost. Yeah, I think that, like I said, I could be mistaken. I think they went 8-4.
They
And
did. They did.
yeah, they went 8-4. They lost to Michigan State, Ohio State, I think Penn State, and Wisconsin.
That
I could
sounds
be
right.
I could be mistaken, but I think that's what happened. And everybody was talking about how, oh, Jim Harbaugh can't beat his rivals. Jim Harbaugh is overrated. And without ever like contextualizing any of it, like how bad the
And then the
program was when he
next
took
year,
over.
and then think about this: the next year they got blown out by like 50, whatever it was, and then they ended up. Then they even lost to Ohio State since 2018.
Yeah, and that's because of Jim Harbaugh. And I think it looks like a very similar thing with Lincoln Riley, especially with the reactions to it. Um, I think that it may have been a little more with Jim Harbaugh at the time, but it seems very similar, just the reaction to everything. I mean, I think Lincoln Riley is a tremendous head coach. I think he's turning this program around.
I
And
think
I
so
think
too.
USC has a bright future, even though they're not great this year.
I think so too. Anthony, you have anything you want to add?
No, I think you guys pretty much summed it up. You know, at the end of the day, as great as USC is, talent-wise and how close these games are, their playoff odds are pretty much dead. They will need complete chaos to make it at this point. But they do got a lot of things to build on. I know they are talking about Miller Moss in the NFL, but I think he's the perfect type of quarterback that we can see coming back for another season for his, his fifth year. And I think that would be great for the program. I think they're going to have a lot of guys come back this year, and I think they're going to be a team that you're not going to want to play next year.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the problem, and we talked about it last week, is like their offensive line and defensive lines are not good, and they're just they're not in these games. They're in these games, but they just keep losing. Like they just keep losing close games, which I think, like I said, like that's a problem for sure, but it is fixable.
Right.
It is. It is very fixable, especially like as the team develops and gets better year to year. I think all of these things are fixable. I think the offensive line and defensive line, I'm sure it will be fixed. I really think it will. And it's also tough for Lincoln. It's tougher for Lincoln Riley than it was for previous USC head coaches, which is that now he's in the Big Ten. He is playing much tougher competition. Some years the Pac-12 was very weak. Or if you were in the Pac-12, you played a fairly weak schedule. Like now it's a little harder for USC than it was previously. I want to get to the SEC. Texas destroys Oklahoma at Red River. There really isn't much to say about this other than Texas is really good. Oklahoma's really bad. I called it last week that this was going to happen. Oklahoma still stinks even after they benched Jackson Arnold. Yeah, Oklahoma stinks. It's also, I think it's also Brent Venables. Yeah, it's also Brent Venables' third season at Oklahoma. You want to talk about head coaches doing a bad job? I think if anything, Oklahoma's taken a step back from Lincoln Riley to Brent Venables. I mean,
Speaking of Brent Venables, he probably wishes he was still at Clemson.
Of course he does. Of course he does. I mean, first of all, I guarantee you Scott Frost he wishes he was still at UCF.
100%.
There's a lot of times when head coaches move up, and this is just true about life in general. You might get that promotion and you're like, I wish I was doing my old job. I mean, that's not even exclusively true about college football, but you are right about that. Oklahoma has, I mean, USC is at least a program on the rise. Oklahoma is like, it's not even arguable. Oklahoma's taken a step back since Brent Venables took over. And we've said it. It's like they have a good defense, but they're like the Iowa below the Mason-Dixon line is what they are. Iowa below the Mason-Dixon line. And
you've said it every week, and they keep proving it every single week.
They prove it. I mean, it's like I'm talking it into existence almost. They keep proving it every week. Their offense is terrible. And by the way, their defense is good, but they still gave up 34 points.
Right.
So like if you're in Oklahoma, and by the way, now they're in the SEC as opposed to the Big 12.
Right.
They're in a super conference now. So that makes it even worse. I mean, that puts in some ways that puts them behind the 8 ball even worse, because at least when they were in the Big 12, half the conference was terrible for a lot of the time. Now it's completely different. It's also just weird seeing these teams change. Like Oklahoma and Alabama have totally switched sides from 5 years ago. I just think that's sort of an odd phenomenon. I could have never imagined that Oklahoma would be a defensive team with no offense, and that Alabama would be an offensive team with no defense. It would be like if you told me 5 years from now Iowa's going to have an amazing offense and play no defense. And like it would just be the oddest thing in the world. Anyway, yeah, if you're an Oklahoma fan, this is just bad. Really, really bad. Everything is bad. Oklahoma does not look good at all. And just for the future of the program, you have to be concerned. But we don't. But whatever. They're
This
not
team,
really.
based on who they have left on their schedule, this team feels like they're just going to go. They're just going to go 6-7 and cash in. That's what it. That's what it seems. They have some very tough games coming up.
Yeah,
And,
their schedule is a gauntlet.
And they probably won't be favored in most of them.
Yeah, definitely a tough scene in Oklahoma. And, obviously you can't expect much from their offense. I mean, what's a true freshman quarterback who's 18, 19 years old going to do against that great Texas defense? So you couldn't expect much offensively. But one thing for Oklahoma and Brent Venables is you're able to hang your hat on their defense, and the defense wasn't necessarily good. Obviously, they got the interception on Quinn Ewers early on. I think Quinn Ewers was trying to get back. It's his first game back. It's going to take him a few passes to get into it. And then Quinn Ewers, was hot pretty much the rest of the game after that. And Texas's run game was dominant. Oklahoma didn't have an answer for Texas's run game. So it was pretty much bad on both sides of the ball. And I don't know where Oklahoma goes from here. They're able to hang their head on their defense. And I understand Texas is a good offense, but right now it doesn't seem like they can do anything right. And like you guys said, with that schedule, it's not going to get any better. And, with this team being an SEC now, it's going to be tough for this program to compete going forward.
Yeah, I mean they're 4-2 right now. They're 4-2. They have 6 games left. They play South Carolina at home. They're barely favorites. They have to go on the road and play Ole Miss. Go on the road and play Missouri. At home against Alabama, and on the road at LSU. I feel like 3 of those. I mean, we were talking about how bad Missouri is, but
they have a game sandwiched in there against Maine, because of course they do.
yeah. I was just gonna say, watch out for Maine. Because all the SEC teams do that. They schedule schools. Some of them I've never even heard of. I only know what Mercer is because Alabama plays them after Thanksgiving every year. That's the only reason I know what that college is.
And the second reason why you would know who they are is because they sometimes make the NCAA tournament when you least expect it.
Yeah, like Mercer College. What even is that? Like, I can't even prove that these colleges exist. You could just put together like some random college kids, give them pads and everything. Like that's what it seems like with these SEC and ACC teams some years in the middle of November. But yeah, their schedule is tough. I mean, on the road at Ole Miss, at Missouri, at home against Alabama, and on the road at LSU. I feel like they win none of those games. From the way Oklahoma's been playing, they win none of those games. I mean, they're playing at home against South Carolina. They're favored by 1.5. I mean, that is even tough too. That they could end up losing. They could end up going 5-7
Yeah.
They might not win another game in the SEC.
Yeah, it's not good.
It-
It's not good.
So yeah, not good for Oklahoma. I will say Texas is the only team, not just in the SEC, but in college football, without any slip ups or without even playing or without showing that they can play badly. In the SEC, they're the only team, because I wouldn't say Ohio State played badly against Oregon. They're the only team so far that hasn't had a bad game, Texas. And they're undefeated, which totally is why they're the number one team in the country. They're the only one who has not had a bad game yet.
I mean, what's even crazier, Nick, looking at Texas' schedule, the only tough game that they have remaining on their schedule is Georgia, and they have to go to College Station. And but even that one, they'll probably win that one too. So
yeah, I mean, Texas does have a fairly favorable schedule this year. But I mean, you never know. You never know, because all of these games are somewhat tough. I mean, they play they go on the road and play Vanderbilt, tougher than we thought it was. So they play Kentucky. Kentucky always plays tough against better teams than them. I'm not saying I think they're going to lose. And they go on the road and play Arkansas, and they go on the road and play Texas A&M. Look, none of these games are just none of these games are like are foregone conclusions by any means. Texas A&M looks like it's going to be their tough, other than Georgia, is going to be their toughest game for the rest of the season. And Texas A&M is actually sneaky good. I mean, they're undefeated in the SEC. Their only loss was to Notre Dame.
Right. Exactly.
So Texas A&M, they could be a playoff team. The SEC right now is like wide open, sneaky wide open.
It's so open. It's ridiculous. Anthony, what do you think?
Yeah, it's definitely wide open. I think the SEC is obviously, showed that it's the best conference and the deepest conference so far in the country. I know a lot of people expected the Big Ten to be, close and compete. I think definitely the SEC is the cream of the crop, and I think we were going to get 4 or 5 SEC teams in the playoffs.
Yeah, I don't think 5. There's no way 5. Maybe 4. No way.
4 seems a little bit more reasonable in my opinion.
Yeah, because 4. I mean, yeah, because they're I can see there being 3 Big Ten teams, 2 ACC teams. That's 5. 1 Big 12 team. That's 6. 1 at-large bid. That's 7. Notre Dame. That's 8, and then that leaves 4 for the SEC.
Right, and the one at-large, it might end up being one in the group of 5s, and Boise State might end up being in that conversation.
Yeah, and it probably will be Boise State. And I will say the rest of the SEC, I mean, Alabama beat South Carolina 27-25. They gave up 19 straight points. Alabama's defense is trash. Let's be honest. Their defense is terrible. I mean, Jalen Milroe, part of it is Jalen Milroe probably had his worst game of the season, I think. I mean, he just did not play a good game. The problem with Alabama is that they're too overly reliant on their offense, like you said last week, and, a lot of people have been saying this. They look like a Big 12 team, like this Alabama team. And to me, it's like, yeah, this is a problem. I think this is a problem. They can still be a playoff team, I think. They can still be a playoff team, but they have to beat Tennessee this Saturday, I think. They probably have to beat Tennessee. And, yeah, they're a playoff team, a top 12 team, probably the bottom half of the top 12 from what I've seen. And here's the thing. In the SEC, since they've played in the SEC this season, they've played one good half. They played one really, really good half against Georgia. And all the 5 other halves were disappointments. To be honest, they were not good. Those 5 other halves. It's one good half they've played so far in the SEC.
It's not the same
That's
Alabama
just not going to be good enough. I'm not even convinced they're that much better than LSU. I think that game is going to be dangerous to them if Garrett Nussmeier goes off, and they throw the ball a lot. LSU, they throw the ball down the field. I mean, that can be a problem for Alabama. I mean, look, if I were to gun to the head, I think Alabama's a playoff team, but I am not so sure about it, even with this 12-team playoff. And last week we talked about them versus the 2021 Alabama team, and it's like, Yeah, the 2021 Alabama team wasn't great. They lost to Texas A&M, but I think that this team is actually has not necessarily worse, but has so many more red flags about it.
Right.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Nick. And as an Alabama fan, I'm definitely more worried now than I was last week. It's one thing, any given Saturday, it's not NFL, but any given Saturday in college football, and things happen. So when the Vanderbilt loss happened, Diego Pavia, a great quarterback, went off. He's been groomed for this his whole life. Obviously, there was a lot of emotion in that game, so it makes sense, to slip up. He just had that emotional win against Georgia. It makes sense. But now for it to happen 2 weeks in a row, now I'm starting to question the head coach. I do like Caleb DeBoer. I do think he's a good coach, but this would never happen under Nick Saban. Obviously, even the Vanderbilt loss, maybe that doesn't even happen with Nick Saban. But even if it does, it for sure as hell ain't going to happen 2 weeks in a row. And I feel like they've been flat 2 weeks in a row. And, South Carolina is pretty much the exact opposite of Vanderbilt. They have a great defense and kind of a struggling offense. So it makes sense for Jalen Milroe to have a bad game with the 2 interceptions, for Ryan Williams to be pretty much neutralized, because South Carolina does have a good defense. They got great pass rushers. They got a great secondary. Kyle Kennard, maybe SEC Defensive Player of the Year candidate this year. So their defense is solid. But at the end of the day, you're the University of Alabama. You got Jalen Milroe, you got Ryan Williams, you got all these great players. You got to put up more points than that against a team like South Carolina. And defensively, you're playing against a quarterback in Lenore Sellers who has struggled all year to pass, and he's going to throw 2 touchdowns and over 230 yards on you. I know that's not a lot of yards, but for South Carolina, it is. And that was definitely, alarming. They scored 19 unanswered points and definitely had a shot at winning that. Alabama gave up that touchdown at the end and then also lost out on that outside kick. Once South Carolina got that outside kick, I was definitely nervous. Thank God Alabama was able to come on top and win, but I don't know, guys. I'm definitely nervous for this Alabama team, because now 2 weeks in a row being flat, I got questions about the coach. I got questions about the defense, and hopefully, Jalen Milroe plays better in the next game.
Yeah. Alabama. Yeah, there's just a whole lot of red flags for Alabama and all of these SEC teams, because I feel like they could step in a landmine at some point. Particularly against LSU. And yeah, a 10-2 Alabama team, do they make the playoff? I'm not 100% sure, but right now I would say I don't think so. I could be wrong, but I don't think a 10-2 Alabama team makes the playoff. That they could still go 11-1, like that. I'm not doubting that, but they have very little margin for error. I mean, maybe they could make the playoff. I mean, if there's 4 SEC teams, I'm not saying they can't, but it's going to be they're really going to have to make the case for it, and the committee is going to really go by the style points and things like that. The other big SEC game from this past weekend, LSU beats Ole Miss in overtime. I had Ole Miss, I think -3.5. Ole Miss blew this game. Ole Miss totally blew this game, and they probably blew their chance to the playoffs. Ole Miss is just, I get it was a road game. It was a difficult game. Ole Miss was winning most of that game. I don't know how much of the game you guys saw. Ole Miss is winning most of that game. At the end of the first half, the running back, I think it was Parrish, fumbles in their own territory. The running back fumbles around midfield. LSU, and by the way, they could have easily at least scored hit a field goal on that drive. Instead, he fumbles, LSU recovers, and at the end of the half, they kick a field goal. That's potentially a 6-point swing right there, which totally killed Ole Miss. And not to mention just the stupid, just that interception at the end, the interception from Jackson Dart, which, in fairness, right after that, Garrett Nussmeier threw an interception. Not long after that, but it was in the end zone. The touchdown in the end zone, which totally could have screwed Ole Miss, and the overtime play was just. I mean, I can't say anything about the defense when LSU scored that last-second touchdown in the fourth quarter. It was a really good throw. There's not much you could do about that, I don't think, other than maybe more pressure on Nussmeier. That's the only thing I can think of. But I mean, Ole Miss just blew this game. They did everything they could to blow this game.
And they did.
Yeah. I mean, in overtime, Ole Miss, there were 2 penalties in overtime. They went negative 15 yards. Negative 15 yards.
Inexcusable. You can't have that.
Juice Wells was a non-factor this whole game. One of their top receivers was a non-factor. In overtime, he should have caught that ball, I think, that behind-the-shoulder pass that he dropped, which was incomplete. It was a terrible overtime performance. They get they got negative 15 yards. They had a holding and a false start in overtime. This was terrible.
Yeah, I think Ole Miss has some questions with their pass defense. I know, it was the one touchdown. It was a great throw by Garrett Nussmeier. He was the player of the game. But Ole Miss's pass defense struggled against Kentucky. They had Brock Vandergrift throwing deep touchdowns against them, and Brock Vandergrift's not a great quarterback. So I've definitely questioned Ole Miss's pass defense. They can be hit or miss here and there. But I think also another difference was I think Garrett Nussmeier was a better quarterback than Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart had 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Garrett Nussmeier had 3 touchdowns. He's really improved. And I think this is why, he could have started much sooner. But he decided to stay at LSU behind Jaden Daniels. And this is why LSU has been so high on Garrett Nussmeier. Obviously, they have a great receiver in Kyron Lacey. But Garrett Nussmeier has played as, probably one of the better quarterbacks in the entire SEC this year. And I think they won this game a lot based on him. And this definitely hurts Ole Miss's chance because, we're talking about a 10-2 Alabama team, maybe not making the playoffs. I don't think there's any way a 10-2 Ole Miss team makes the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, they would have to beat Georgia. They would have to beat Georgia. And from the way Ole Miss is playing, it's like, I don't know. I mean, they couldn't beat Kentucky. I'm sorry. Yeah, they couldn't even beat Kentucky. In their own stadium. This game was winnable. This was a very winnable game for LSU. I mean, Georgia, I don't think is the same team that they once were. I think that Georgia certainly has taken a step back offensively for sure. Their run game is not what it once was. They don't have the playmakers on offense that they had last year. Nope. And honestly, I don't think Georgia's fully recovered. But I still think Georgia's a much better team than Ole Miss. I still think that the difference between these two programs is these two teams is just too big.
100%.
100%.
Yeah. I mean, Ole Miss, I do think their playoff shot their playoff chances are just very shot, I think.
They're super shot after this.
And
this was
no margin of
game. This is a game that they should have won in overtime. You could also make the argument that this is a game they should have won in regulation too.
Yeah, so, they have no margin for error. No margin for error.
Yep.
And I mean the other,
which is the case. But to be fair, though, that's the case with a lot of these teams with 1 to 2 or whatever to where they can't lose again. So
yeah, that's true. I mean, well, the reason that they even have a shot at all is because they're playing Georgia, and it's like if they beat Georgia, maybe that would be maybe in that case.
Talk about an interesting scenario. Who gets in?
Well, it also depends too on number one, if they beat Georgia, but it's how they beat Georgia. If they barely win and it's this back and forth tight game, the committee may favor Georgia at case. But if Ole Miss blows them out somehow, then that will definitely be an eye opener to the committee as well.
Well, if they're both 10-2 and Ole Miss beats them head to head, Ole Miss is ahead of Georgia.
My question for you guys is, what if now Alabama loses to Tennessee and Ole Miss beats Georgia, and you got a 10-2 Ole Miss team and a 10-2 Alabama team? Both teams had bad losses. One to Kentucky, one to Vanderbilt. Both beat Georgia. One lost to LSU, one lost to Tennessee. That's going to be an interesting scenario if it comes down to Alabama and Ole Miss.
Yeah. No, that's true.
No, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, it could be really tough for the committee. I do want to get to the other big SEC game of the week. Tennessee beats Florida in overtime. By the way, I don't know if you guys saw the end of this game, but in overtime, they ruled Dylan Sampson down. They claimed his forward progress had stopped when which would have been a touchdown. By the way, his forward progress did not stop. I don't know where they got that from.
No, I don't think it did either.
like he was just fighting with the defenders to get into the end zone. Like it wasn't anything abnormal. It wasn't like they brought him down or anything like that. Now, I did say in the SEC, Alabama has played one good half of 3 games. That is true. Tennessee, since playing in the SEC, has played 0 good halves.
That's true. That's true. They always put themselves in the hole every week.
And what happened to Nico Iamaleava? I mean, he's pretty much disappeared. He's pretty much been a non-factor, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception. I mean, if not for Dylan Sampson carrying this offense and this defense, Tennessee probably would have a couple more losses. Tennessee should have, won this game easily. Should have went to overtime. And I have a lot of questions about this Tennessee offense.
Yeah, their offense has been totally just terrible in these past. Tennessee's offense has been terrible. Since they played in the SEC. At first, I chalked it up to Oklahoma having a good defense, which they do. But then they did it again against Arkansas in the game that they lost. And then they can't even play. Then they're playing at home against Florida. I mean, Florida stinks. Right. How do you let Florida take you to overtime? And it's not even so much their run game. It's their pass game that's been so bad. Nico has thrown for less than 200 yards every single one of these games. He's been brutal. Bad.
It's brutal.
Yeah, he just hasn't been that good. And yeah, Tennessee, they have very little margin for error. They're going to have to beat Alabama. I mean, Tennessee, I have no reason to believe is a playoff team. I just don't. I said a few weeks ago that probably this Tennessee team is better than the one 2 years ago, the Hendon Hooker team. I don't think so anymore. I think the 2022 team would beat this team, just from what we've seen from Tennessee.
Nico Iamaleava hasn't turned out to be the quarterback that Hendon Hooker once was.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he will be. He's still young. I'm not saying
redshirt freshman.
Yeah, I'm not saying he doesn't have talent, but it's been bad. Their passing game has been terrible. And yeah, like at least Alabama, they have that win against Georgia. Tennessee has nothing. They have a win against Oklahoma and Florida in OT.
It's brutal.
These are not they have not looked good at all. Big 12, Kansas State beat Colorado. Colorado got a tough break. Travis Hunter got hurt. He didn't play the whole second half, which I think is the reason they ended up losing.
Yeah, it was tough. But I want to give Shedeur Sanders credit. I mean, even without his top 2 receivers, because not only was Travis Hunter out, Jimmy Horn Jr., their second best receiver, was out. Shedeur Sanders was still able to put up 3 touchdowns and almost 400 yards. Yeah. So he did try to carry the offense as much as he could. I do think, Nick, obviously having Travis Hunter on defense would have made a much bigger impact, because obviously Avery Johnson, who struggles to pass, had 2 passing touchdowns. Maybe Travis Hunter negates some of that. But one big difference was Kansas State's running back. I said it coming in as DJ Gibbons, one of the top running backs in the country. They didn't have an answer for him. He had over 150 total yards from scrimmage. They couldn't stop him. So I think that factored in. But yeah, for Colorado, when you lose a guy like Travis Hunter, who's the heart and soul of your team, it's going to be tough for them to win. And it's unfortunate for Colorado, because they had everything going their way. And this would have been a great win. And this would have been the trademark win to get them into the rankings for the first time in the Deion Sanders era.
Yeah, this was definitely a heartbreaking loss if you're a Colorado fan, but you got to give Kansas State all the credit in the world. They didn't quit down by 10 with, 10 minutes and change to go in the game. You have to give them all the credit in the world for staying resilient. And the way Avery Johnson played at the end of the game, and the way he just kind of took over and said, I don't care that this is Boulder, I don't care that this is Deion's house or whatever, and I'm just going to go out and do my thing. Just to see him have the level of confidence that he did, as well as to see some other guys that we don't usually hear from step up for K-State was a huge deal too. So,
yeah. It's just, I mean, look, the Big 12 is wide open. Whoever wins it is, I think Iowa State's going to win the Big 12. They look like the best team in the Big 12 right now. I mean, Colorado's been playing well. I just don't think they're going to win the Big 12 ultimately.
No, I don't think so either. This is the first den of many dents that will endanger their Big 12 hopes and eventually end them, I think.
Yeah. And the other the other Big 12 game is Arizona State upsetting Utah 27-19. Utah, to me, the big story here is not that Utah really lost the game. I mean, whatever. They're not they're not winning the Big 12, but I think the big story to me is Cameron Rising is now out with a leg injury for the rest of the season.
Yeah, now there's a chance he could be back for his 8th year next year.
8th year. How long are these guys in college? I wish I could stay in college that long.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was a tough break for Utah. It seems like Cam Rising, can't stay healthy. And he makes this offense go. You can see him even trying to throw the ball, and he's wincing. So now Zach Wilson's younger brother, Isaac Wilson, will come into play. Obviously, a freshman quarterback. I don't think we'll be talking about Utah too much going forward. This is probably going to be, a down year for them. But for Arizona State, what about the running back, Cam Scatterborough? He's been unbelievable for Arizona State. He's been carrying this offense. He's one of the top running backs in the country. He has a lot to do with why Arizona State has this great record as they do.
He's arguably the most underrated running back in the country, too.
Yeah, no one's talking about him. And, for Cam Rising, though, at the end of the day, I understand, you want to have guys have 4 years of college, of at least playing. But at the end of the day, how many medical red shirts can you get? I feel like they got to cut the line at about
he's going to be 40 years old still in college. He's 25 now. He's going to be 26 next year, and he's still going to be playing college football. It's ridiculous. It's like Stetson Bennett winning at 25. Do they still go to class at that point? How does that work?
Well, I know that at the schools that I went to, it was mandatory for them to go to class. Now, if they actually did, is a different story. But I don't know at that point. So
yeah, I don't know. All right. Picks. We got to get to the picks this week. Georgia at Texas -3.5. I feel I think the line, I could be wrong about this. I think the line may have actually went up. I could in favor of Texas. I think I could be wrong about that. But 3.5. Hold on a second. Wait, I'm just checking DraftKings right now. Here it is. Crap.
Yeah, the line according to ESPN went up to Texas -5.
Oh wow.
Mm-hmm.
What a change since it's a couple days ago.
Yeah, I don't know why it's not showing up on DraftKings. Whatever. Yeah. Here it is. Yeah, Texas -5, and now it's actually Texas -5.
So are we just restarting this part over again?
Yeah, but we're just going to edit that part out.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry guys. I put the lines up when they were on Monday.
It's okay. Don't worry about it. Georgia at Texas -5. This is, anything within a touchdown in a game like this is going to be tough for me to justify covering. I think Texas is going to cover. I think they're going to win by a touchdown. I think it's going to be a close game, but I think Texas is going to be able to cover the 5 points. I think Georgia lacks the playmakers that they had on offense. I think their run game seems to struggle. Texas has a very good defense. They have a very good front seven. I think I can see them being overly reliant on Carson Beck. But look, when I look at this game, it's I look at so many flaws with Georgia that we've seen and so few with Texas. I think Texas's quarterback play is also a lot better, obviously. So to me, I think, and they're playing at home, it's going to be a tough environment for Georgia. So give me Texas.
Texas, easy pick. I think the home field advantage is going to be too much. I think Carson Beck plays well. I think Georgia is the game early, but I think Texas pulls away late. Just barely covers the number. They'll probably end up winning by a touchdown or so. It'll be one of these back and forth instant classic kind of games where the ratings are going to spike with about 2 minutes to go, where maybe 11 to 12 million people are going to be flocking to ABC to see this one. So I think Texas wins a barn burner down there. That's what I think. It'll be a good game.
Yeah, I hate that I have to do this because Texas is probably the best team in the country. They have the best roster. In my opinion, they probably have the best defense. Quinn Ewers is probably a better quarterback than Carson Beck, and they probably have a better offense. But I just feel like Georgia's going to pull off the upset. I can't believe I'm saying it, but I just feel like they really need this win. They don't want to drop 2 losses already this early. Texas really hasn't been tested. I understand that they got the best defense, but they haven't really played any great quarterbacks. So they haven't really been tested. And I think Carson Beck's the best quarterback they played so far. Trevor Etienne is a good running back for Georgia. They got a couple decent playmakers, but like Nick said, not to the caliber of a Ladd McConkey or a Brock Bowers that they had last year. But I just think Georgia's going to come out and win. I think Texas is going to get their first loss, and I just got a feeling for Georgia, so I'm going to go Georgia this week.
All right. So Texas, Georgia. All right. Alabama -2.5 at Tennessee. Here's the thing. 1/2 of good football is better than 0. Is how I will sum it up. I understand Alabama's playing on the road. Overall, I think this Alabama team has been better than this Tennessee team overall.
I think so too.
Tennessee's defense has bailed them out. Their run game has also sort of bailed them out. But at least they played much like Alabama at least has beaten Georgia, which was, that was a tremendous game, or a tremendous half, as I would put it, of football. Whereas Tennessee has been, I think Alabama's looked shaky. Tennessee has looked worse than that. Alabama's looked like a better team. They really, really have looked like a better team than than Tennessee. So I like Alabama to win this by a field goal. It's going to be a close game, but I still like Alabama to win.
Yeah, I like Alabama too, 37-34. It's going to be one of those shootout kind of games where Bama's more than likely going to have to rally and win. I think you're going to see a few highlight reel catches in this game too. I think it's going to be one of those games where you'll remember when you saw it. And it's going to be one of those games too where Tennessee is going to be up, in my opinion, for most of the second half, and they're going to find a way to blow it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be a shootout. Only the reason I say that is because Tennessee's offense has just been so bad. I will say I can see it being a shootout because Tennessee is ready to play this game.
Right, and my counter argument to that would be also they always play Alabama tough every year.
They do, because this is a game you really hype yourself up for.
Right.
So that could happen. But from the way Tennessee's offense has looked, I don't know if Tennessee could get into a shootout with anybody. I don't think Tennessee could get into a shootout with like a culinary school from the way they've been playing. I mean, their passing game has been so bad.
Yeah, I don't see this being a shootout. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. And, it's strength versus strength, weakness against weakness. It's going to be the strength of Alabama's offense going up against Tennessee's strong defense, and then vice versa. It's going to be, the struggling Tennessee offense against the struggling Alabama defense. So I think, Alabama's offense and Tennessee's defense will both make plays, which will kind of negate each other. So, but I do think the difference will be Alabama's defense against Tennessee's offense. I don't trust Nico Iamaleava. And I don't think he'll be able to make enough plays against, kind of a struggling Alabama defense. So I think Alabama's defense will be able to make enough plays on defense against Nico to win this game. So I think it's going to be low scoring, but I'm going to go with Alabama to win and cover.
All right. Michigan -1 at Illinois. I hate picking Michigan games because they're the toughest to predict. We don't even know who their quarterback's going to be. They've had 3 different quarterbacks. It's like it's like a pitching rotation, almost. I like Illinois. I do.
Actually, Michigan's quarterback is going to be Jack Tuttle.
Jack Tuttle. Yeah, I figured that's who it was going to be. Who actually can throw the ball and doesn't always throw it to the other team like Davis Warren.
Right.
Or Alex Orji, who can't even really pass at all. I like Illinois a little bit. They're playing at home. Michigan just has so many red flags this year, and so many there's just too many things with Michigan that I think can go wrong in a given game, to the point where I just find it really hard to be able to pick them against a ranked team on the road.
Okay. Well, having watched every single Illinois game this year, I can tell you that Illinois living up to expectations in terms of when it comes to them covering is easier said than done. I learned that the hard way. They barely beat a Purdue team, which Illinois was favored by I think it was 24 plus, and they only won by 1. That was a little scary. But yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot of hype around this one. It's a sold out house, the second sold out game at Memorial Stadium this year. The first one being Kansas, which Illinois won, and I mean, I know that Illinois has a bad taste in its mouth from 2 years ago. They felt like, okay, we can go to Ann Arbor and maybe pull off this upset. They nearly did. So 2 years later, they have a chance to exact revenge. I think this is going to be a great game. Unfortunately, though, I think Michigan is just a little bit better. And I think Illinois' defense, even though it looks like Xavier Scott is going to be back in Illinois secondary, I don't think it's going to be enough for Illinois to win in this game. And Luke Altmaier is going to have to play the best game of his Illinois career so far to give Illinois the best chance to win, as well as Pat Bryant. And without your workhorse and Caden Fagan in the backfield, he's out with the leg injury. Unfortunately, it's more than likely going to be a couple weeks before we see him back again. But if certain things don't go Illinois' way, Michigan, I think, should be able to take a lead comfortably, but I think Illinois will rally late and just come up a little bit short. I actually think Michigan covers this number. They win the game 30-27, and yeah, I mean, would I obviously love to see Illinois win? Of course, I would. I don't see that you can beat a Michigan team who's had 2 weeks to put to bed, if you will, the Washington loss and come out and try to play as angry of a football game as they can. And that's what I think Jerome Ward, Michigan, is going to do. And I just don't think Illinois has played. And it's no disrespect to their schedule, but really the only good team they played all year to this point, and this is just me being honest, is Penn State. This is the second real tough team that they played all year, and this is no disrespect to Nebraska, who we're going to get to in a little bit, but Nebraska is the furthest thing from a Michigan. Those are two different beasts. So I usually like Michigan here to get it done. I think Tuttle does enough, and I actually think it'll be one of the best games of the day. It'll be a good one.
Yeah, Anthony.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Michigan as well. I don't trust Illinois' defense, especially after what happened last week. That was a crazy game with Purdue. The fact that Purdue was able to come back and force overtime was unbelievable. So I don't trust Illinois defensively. Going up against Michigan's run game, that's going to be tough. I think Jack Tuttle gives them the best option to pass. He's probably their best passing quarterback. And I think the defense led by Will Johnson and Mason Graham, I think they're going to give Luke Altmaier troubles. Luke Altmaier has had his moments where he's been a good quarterback, but there are times where he does play poor. And I don't think this is going to be one of his good games, so I think Michigan's going to win as well.
All right. So another game, another Big Ten game, Nebraska at Indiana, who's sneakily like a really good offensive team.
They're great. They average like 40 plus points a game, and they basically know how to run it up when they need to. And I think this is a perfect statement game to get to 7-0. I think this is the easiest game to pick of the whole weekend. I think Indiana covers this one easily. What do you guys think?
Who has Indiana actually played, though?
They haven't really played anyone yet.
Well, exactly. They haven't really played anybody yet. I like Indiana to win outright, but I like Nebraska to cover. I think Nebraska covers.
Okay.
5 points. I think this could be a rude awakening for Indiana. I don't know a ton about either team, but from what I've seen, like this is Indiana's schedule has been pretty easy.
Yeah, and I mean, as I alluded to, there are only 2 tough games that are remaining on the schedule are Michigan and Ohio State. If they can go into if you can go into the Michigan game undefeated, I think that goes to show you how lax their schedule is. And I've seen Indiana fans on social media saying like, "Oh, this should be celebrating," whatever. I don't blame them for being excited, but when you're playing teams like Charlotte and when you're playing teams like Northwestern and you're playing these other schools that just simply aren't good. I mean, I understand you beat who's on your schedule, but this is, to me, this is not the 16th ranked team in the country, and that's just me being honest. They haven't played anybody yet. So
I just feel like written all over it. And
I was just gonna say though, I just feel like with this game being in Bloomington instead of Lincoln, that's why I'm leaning more towards Indiana to cover. But if it was the exact opposite, I would totally take Nebraska.
Yeah, I think this has upset written all over it, but like you said, it's tough picking Nebraska on the road. I do think Indiana will win, but I don't think they'll cover. They haven't really played anybody on their schedule. I do think Curtis Rourke, the quarterback for Indiana, has been one of the best quarterbacks in the country. They got 3 great receivers on their team, so they have one of the best offenses in the country. And Nebraska, I do think Dylan Raiola is talented, but he can turn the ball over. And I think Indiana, with Curtis Rourke being the veteran quarterback who doesn't really turn the ball over, 14 touchdowns, only 2 picks. I think that's going to be the difference. Nebraska does have a good defense too. I do think that's why Indiana won't cover. But I think the difference between the experience between Curtis Rourke and Dylan Raiola, even though Raiola may be a better NFL prospect, more talented, right now Rourke's better. So I think Indiana wins, but no cover.
All right.
Okay.
So Miami at Louisville. I've really cooled off on Miami. I think Miami is they play a lot of bad games that they were sort of lucky to win, and they're a very undisciplined. They're a very undisciplined team. I mean, they had like 110 yards of penalties against Cal last week. But I will say, I think Miami is going to come out. I think Miami has substantially more talent than Louisville does, and I think that this game is not a look-ahead game like Cal and Virginia Tech were. I think Miami is going to come out, and they are going to be very motivated, and I think Miami covers the spread. Even though it's a road game, I think Miami is much more talented than Louisville, and I think my gut is telling me that they're going to come out, and they're going to be motivated, and almost like a get-right game for Miami, because this is a very big game for Miami. So I like Miami to not take a nap for 3 quarters like they did against Cal.
I agree. Yeah, I'm just gonna keep this short and sweet. I think this is a comfortable win for Miami. They're playing a Louisville team that's okay at best. I don't think them going on the road is going to scare anybody. I don't really consider Louisville one of the better home field advantages in college football. This is going to simply be a business trip, and they're going to go back down to South Beach afterward and reassess where they need to get better before October really ramps up and gets a little bit more interesting, because they got the Florida State game coming up here soon, and they've got a couple other ones to where they need to make sure their ducks are in a row, because this undefeated season is obviously still in play, but it's not going to be easy if they keep playing down to their competition, and this is the week where I don't believe they'll do that. So.
Yeah, I think this is where Miami loses. So I think Louisville is going to pull out the upset. I understand Louisville may not be a great team, but I do think they're a good team. Tyler Shunk has played good football, and their offense has been pretty good. Ja'Cory Brooks at wide receiver. They got a couple other good wide receiver options. So I do think this is going to be a shootout. Obviously, Cam Ward and Xavier Restrepo, one of the best duos in all college football. Cam Ward does tend to turn the ball over. So does Tyler Shunk. So I do think this is going to be a back and forth game. It's going to be a shootout. But since Louisville being the toughest team that Miami has played, and they've had a lot of close matchups, I do think that they're due to slip up. And I do think it's going to be right here. So I'm going to go with Louisville to get the upset.
Okay.
All right. So now it's time to end the show with unnecessary wagers. So here's my unnecessary wager. It's an 8-pick parlay. Alabama money line at Tennessee. Texas A&M minus 15.5 at Mississippi State. Mississippi State stinks. Texas A&M is actually sneaky good. They're actually undefeated in the SEC. So like we were talking about before. So I like Texas A&M to cover the big 15.5 point spread. Iowa State minus 13.5 at home versus UCF. UCF has really fallen off. And Iowa State, like I said, is the hottest team in the Big 12 right now. And they're playing at home. I love Iowa State. Over 55 in the West Virginia-Kansas State game. Kentucky minus 2 at Florida. Florida stinks. Kentucky is actually a fairly decent team. I mean, it's only 2 points, so
right.
I feel good about that. USC money line at Maryland. That should be easy. And then in the Georgia-Texas game, Carson Beck, 250 or more passing yards, and Quinn Ewers, 2 or more passing touchdowns. So that is an unnecessary wager. We'll see you guys. We'll see you guys next week. This is Forever Power 5. That's Zain Bando. That's Anthony Balester. We will be back next week. Thanks for watching and listening, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good one.